Hello and welcome to Unsportsmanlike Conduct, the show where two British brothers talk all things NFL. I'm your host, Dom Corbs, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nick Corbs. And I actually saw you, Nick, in Edinburgh just last weekend.
You did indeed. Dom had to take a trip up north to Scotland, came up to see the Fringe, saw some good shows, and ready to get back to the pod.
And you know what was more exciting about the shows now is that I met real life fans of the pod, i.e. your mates.
You did. We were basically local celebrities up here.
Yeah, we were fighting them off. It was great to meet our fans, connect with them. You know, they're all five of them are really sound blokes. But it was nice to be out there, new, see the Fringe, see you. So we are going to have our preseason week 2 roundup for this episode. And we've got, me and Nu have some games we want to talk about, some players we want to talk about. But the player that we have to start with is Caleb Williams, the Bears quarterback, the Bears rookie quarterback. Nu, what did you think of his second week performance?
Well, Dom, you know I've been banging on about the Bears all of the pod. For the last 2-3 episodes, I've been talking about the Bears. And I actually want to retract one of my previous statements. Because I said the Bears might go 11-6 and make the playoffs. I think the Bears are winning the division. What Caleb Williams is doing in this preseason is different gravy. It is different level. That throw out the pocket to Rome Odunze is one of the best throws I've seen, not from a rookie, but from any quarterback in a long, long time. Those are throws that no one else can make. With this team, with that offense, I really, really see them going far. He had 2 amazing plays where he was probably held the ball for 10 seconds, maybe, dancing around the back of the line and then throwing 2 touchdowns and running one in. I really think Caleb Williams is the future of this franchise and the future of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you, Nu. Caleb Williams, I think, in that throw, the one where he was rolling to his left and hit Rome Odunze down the sideline, like right in the bucket, 45 yards, is an amazing throw. Now, I've seen online that there are people being like, oh, look, Bryce Young did it last season, or like, oh, look, Mike White has done it before. And those are all true. But what makes that throw so elite is the fact that Caleb Williams had like 3 of them in one game. And actually the play after, which was called back because Rome Odunze put his foot out of the end zone, was almost just as good. So it's not about the player in a vacuum that makes that play so elite. It's the fact that Caleb Williams had 3 of them in one game, I think in the same drive. They were like, those 3 plays were like 4 plays in one drive. Like, it was insane to see that happening so early on. What I was worried about with my pre-draft evaluation of Caleb is that his style of backyard football, I didn't think would translate to the NFL, where everyone is bigger, faster, stronger, a better athlete. But it already is. And that's what is almost scary about Caleb Williams, is that everyone knew that he had a really high ceiling. But the issue for him is, how is that game going to translate to the NFL? Is it going to be harder for him? And at the moment, it doesn't seem to be. It is only preseason. He did, put a move on an undrafted free agent backup, third string backup, to have that Rome Odunze touchdown. But nevertheless, I mean, those were truly, truly special plays. And I said on my TikTok, at Don Corbs NFL, go follow me, by the way. I said on my TikTok that Caleb Williams is already a top 5 quarterback at throwing on the move. Like, he's that good at it. Like, he is so accurate. He keeps his velocity. He throws from these insane arm angles off platform. Like, it is, I mean, I won't hesitate to say it. It's elite. Him throwing on the move is elite. And I think that Rome Odunze as well is going to be the wide receiver 2 in this offense. I think that, fine, we're seeing it at the moment. Oh, Keenan Allen's fat. Oh, Keenan Allen's slow. Newsflash, he's not exactly been quick ever in his career. He's going to be like the reliable wide receiver 3. He's going to go from the slot. He's not going to be a vertical threat. That's going to be Rome Odunze. And that might take a bit of time for Rome Odunze to probably become that wide receiver 2. But I mean, we saw in the preseason, he was getting jet sweeps, he was getting end arounds, he was getting tough fades down the sideline. Like, he couldn't really do it all. He's a bigger receiver, but don't mistake him for like a Marvin Harrison Jr. type who's more traditional. Like, Rome Odunze can do everything you need of him.
Yeah, Keenan Allen is on that Kelvin Benjamin off-season diet. He's 2 biscuits short of a tight end. No one's surprised by Rome Odunze, really, are they? He was always probably one of the highest ceiling players in the draft. And yeah, I completely agree, Dom. I think he's going to fit seamlessly to that wide receiver two role. Similarly, I know you want to talk about this as well, the role of Malik Nabers in this Giants offense. So Malik Nabers had a great game in preseason, I thought. He had 1 drop, but he had 1 great sideline catch against the Texans. But the more of the highlight from this was Daniel Jones's performance. He in the first half was terrible. That pick 6 is something you don't even see in Brit Ball level. That is amateur stuff and not something that you would expect from a sixth-year quarterback. Now, I do think he played well for the rest of the game. I think too much of the media attention was on the beginning of that. But I really do think that Malik Nabers, like I said in the previous episode, will be the offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Nabers flash in this game already. Like, some of the catches that he made were amazing, genuinely amazing. Like, getting his feet out, getting both his feet in, catching the ball above his head. Like, he did amazingly in that game. You really saw the potential that Nabers had, and that was really, really exciting for the Giants. I do think, though, that they were almost forcing him the ball at times. I think deliberately, and I think obviously Daniel Jones was, but I also think that was part of the design for a lot of those plays where Daniel Jones didn't do so well. So on that first one where Stingley jumped the route too early and therefore missed the interception on that first play, like that was never really there. Like, Stingley's playing a couple yards off, it's like a stop or a hitch route, like that, and he's got his eyes on Daniel Jones the whole time. But I think obviously that's not a great throw. Daniel Jones should not throw that ball. And then the second play, obviously, when it was picked off to Jalen Petrie on that pick six, I think he was trying to throw it away there. I honestly do. Was it a good decision? No. Did it result in a pick six? Yes. Is it a bad play? And that cannot happen in the NFL? Yeah, absolutely. But I think the Daniel Jones slander is being massively, massively over-exaggerated at this point. Like, I think people are expecting him to be a top 10 quarterback when we know he's not going to be. Like, why are we still holding Daniel Jones to these lofty, lofty heights? Yes, his contract pays him, well, now it's aged like he's being paid like a top 15-ish quarterback. But so why are we still comparing him to comparing him to a Kyler Murray or a CJ Stroud or a Jordan Love? Like, he's not that quarterback. We know he's not. I think the bad plays in this game were massively overblown. Yeah, there are some ugly ones in there. He had that other pick to Derek Stingley against Jalen Hyatt on a fade. Again, not to make excuses for him, because I think the ball should have been put on like a higher trajectory, like it was a bit flat, which is why Stingley was able to make a play on it. But the design of that play was really odd. The ball could have gone nowhere else, really. If you look at the tape and you look at all 22, that ball can go nowhere else. And Hyatt got bullied by Stingley out to the sideline. There was no space to put that ball anywhere. Now, again, Daniel Jones could have thrown it with a better trajectory, but I'm not holding these players against Daniel Jones. I think that after that, he really came into his own. He had that deep bomb to Slayton for almost a touchdown, which was like 45 yards right in the bucket. That was great. He had a nice rush on second and long as well, picked up some yards with his legs. Did it look amazing? No, it looks incredibly clunky when he runs, but he's a good rushing threat, man. Like, and he's got some, and those Nabers catches like we were talking about, who threw those balls? Daniel Jones did. Like, we can't separate Nabers being amazing and having amazing plays and not give some credit to the person throwing them.
No, Dom, I completely agree. But one thing this does remind me of is another Giants QB receiver pairing, which was when Eli Manning and Odell Beckham Jr. were together. The Giants offense almost entirely collapsed and almost led to Eli Manning being kicked out of the Giants because the offense was only scheduled around Odell. When Odell didn't get the ball, the entire offense collapsed. That is a fear for me with this new Giants offense. Even though Nabers should be the main target and will be the main target, it is really important that players like Hyatt, players like Slayton, players like Wan'Dale Robinson are also incorporated into the offense to keep it dynamic. And one-note offenses don't go far. They might win you some games, but they're not going to go very far. So I completely agree. It's not all on Daniel Jones, but he really needs to step up his game if the Giants have any shot of even having an okay season.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If it's just Nabers, then a team can pretty easily stop him. Like, you just bracket him. Will he get a catch here and there? Yeah, of course. But like, I think Jalen Hyatt as the deep threat really needs to step up this year. He didn't have that opportunity last year just because of the style of quarterback that he had. Like, they didn't throw it deep in that Giants offense. I think he had like one deep catch all year on like one game. Like, they need to open up that part of the offense, especially. They need to get Wan'Dale Robinson going. He's been injured. He's never really kind of lived up to that, fairly decent draft type that he had when he was drafted. And obviously Slayton, look, he's never going to be a top 20, 25 wide receiver, but he's pretty reliable. And when he gets the ball, he can do his job, and we saw it in this preseason game anyway. So you're absolutely right. It can't just be the Malik Nabers show. It needs to be, Malik Nabers is the main character. He gets all the screen time, but then needs those kind of supporting actors, those supporting wide receivers need to have their time as well for this offense to really kind of keep ticking and to keep moving along. Now, from Daniel Jones, we're going to go on to a very interesting quarterback situation, I think, in Pittsburgh between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Now, before I kind of give my take on this, what's your opinion on those two quarterbacks? Who do you think should start?
I think it's just pretty depressing, to be honest with you, Tom. If I'm a Pittsburgh fan, I'm pretty sad right now. I don't see a lot of future with either of them. I think Russ has to start because I think of what he has proved he can do. And towards the end of his tenure in Denver, he looked serviceable. I don't think he's worth the money they're paying him. I don't think anyone does. But what he was doing was okay. And I've always been a bit of a Fields believer. But it's just so hard to back him up, especially in this Arthur Smith offense. But Don, what do you think?
See, I think that Justin Fields should be starting. I think that Justin Fields should be the starter.
Okay.
I think what we've got to keep in mind here is that the Broncos are paying $85 million for Russell Wilson to not play for them. Like, he's not just not good, he's actively bad and actively hinders an offense by not playing within the confines of it. Like, he's coming off his reads too early, he's trying to play backyard football too often, and his age now doesn't allow him to do that. He's trying to play like he was playing when he was like 25, 26, when he was just first coming out in Seattle and having those amazing seasons. Like, rolling out of pockets, dodging defenders. He can't do that anymore. He's like 33 years of age. Like, he's like an older gentleman at this point in terms of the lifespan of a quarterback. Not every quarterback gets to play like Aaron Rodgers or like Tom Brady. So he's physically declined. And I also think that the mental aspect of his game has also declined, with him not being able to properly read offenses and coming off reads too early and not hitting receivers when they're about to come open. Like, the first passing play he had was a speed out to Van Jefferson coming across the formation. So Van Jefferson, this is like a gimme, right? Numil, you could probably make that pass. It wouldn't look pretty, but he's running into space. The defender's following him 3 yards. It should be an easy completion. Somehow, Russell Wilson turns that throw into a hospital ball. He throws it up and behind him. Van Jefferson gets lit up. Like, that's more than a routine throw in the NFL. That's a routine throw in high school. And if Russell Wilson's not able to make the easiest throw arguably in the book, then what are we even doing here? And 3rd and 10 takes a big sack when he had a clean pocket. He took 3 sacks on 10 passing attempts. Like, that is unfeasible. That completely derails the offense if you're taking that many negative plays. And seeing a washed Russell Wilson in the huddle and then them panning to Arthur Smith and he's sending on Cordell Patterson, it makes me actually want to end it all. Like, I'm not even a Steelers fan. And if I see Cordell Patterson come on and Russell Wilson under center and Arthur Smith on the sideline, I'm turning my television off. I'm not watching it because I can't support that in good faith. But I think Fields should start because I think he's shown signs of improvement. Is he a perfect quarterback now? Absolutely not. But I think there are a few things which has improved already from his time in Chicago. I think he's able to throw with a bit more anticipation than he was before. If he gets a really good base and is in really good rhythm, he can make some really nice throws. I think the 2 fumbles from the first preseason game were very overblown. Is it still a mixed bag? Yes, the accuracy is still really, really spotty. He isn't throwing with anticipation enough, and he's still taking sacks. But I think that the aspect of Justin Fields' legs, for me, is the real tipping point between the decision of starting Russ or starting Fields, because I think they're comparable as passers. Russ might be slightly better just by experience, but Fields' legs, I think, gives you the X factor that Russell Wilson is completely lacking. Like, he had some really nice rushes already. He had a 20-yard rush in this preseason game alone, which was really nice. That is what this offense is really missing. And is Fields going to throw a couple picks? Is he going to take some really bad sacks? Yes, absolutely. Is he a great NFL quarterback now? Far from it. But I think he is, for me, should be the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. And if he's bad, great, you go back to Russ.
But when you look at Arthur Smith's time as an OC back in Tennessee, when he really had success was with Ryan Tannehill and Marcus Mariota, who Justin Fields is much more similar to, in the fact that it's don't make mistakes and use your legs based off the run game. So I do agree with you, but the one thing I would say, Dom, is that Russ has sort of lost confidence. And I think his scrambling ability was always elite, and he has lost that to some degree. But the reason why he was such a good quarterback was his deep ball, was his accuracy. And I think a lot of that is based off his loss of confidence that happened in Denver and the media scrutiny around him. I do believe that he can get back to that level, but I completely agree with you, Dom. When you've got Cordell Patterson under center and you're running the ball every play, I don't see how he's going to get back up to that level. And I do see Fields starting, or at least getting consistent minutes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think Russell Wilson is the better passer. Obviously, Russ's moon ball is just as iconic as his scrambling ability when he was, a few years younger. Like when it comes off the screen, almost hits the rafters and come back down like that classic arcing moon ball. I'm sure he's still got that. Maybe there might be a few less yards on it due to his arm strength probably declining just naturally with age. But yeah, you're right. Like I think Russ does offer more in the passing game, but I don't think the person to help him develop that passing game is Arthur Smith. Like, obviously, look, Desmond Ridder wasn't a good quarterback. I'm not going to put all of the Falcons' woes at the feet of Arthur Smith. But equally, you can't, completely say that it wasn't his fault. And I think the offense that we're already seeing it's preseason, so when we're seeing a very limited offense, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to, watch the few preseason games and extrapolate that to the whole season, because coaches deliberately don't whip out a lot of their plays in preseason because there's no point. But already there's just like weird, that classic Arthur Smith, like weird spacing, concepts that don't really make sense from certain formations. And that's the bigger concern with me for both Fields and for Russ. And really the whole Steelers team is that the crux of this issue here is Arthur Smith. He's not a very good offensive coordinator, I don't think. I think we're in a golden age of offensive coordinators. There's so many that would go from like quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator or wide receiver coach to offensive coordinator, and they land with Arthur Smith. Like that's pretty dark, man. That's pretty dark after everything they endured last season under who was it last season?
Oh my God, Matt Canada,
exactly. After everything they endured under Matt Canada last season, and then you give them Arthur Smith. Oh, mate, that is rough. That is seriously rough. That is seriously rough. But that's the thing. I think that either way with the Steelers, the bottom line here is that they have both these quarterbacks. I really like that process in getting both of them because they're both incredibly cheap. I mean, I don't know what they're paying Russ, if anything, but I know that the Broncos are footing a large sum of that bill. And obviously Justin Fields went on the cheap as well for like a conditional 7th or something mental. So it's very low risk in terms of what they've invested either in draft picks or financially into these quarterbacks. And when inevitably, I think both of them kind of don't really pan out, they can really hammer the draft. But the bigger issue is that like the Steelers as a team are never going to be a really, really bad one. Like then, like they've had a winning season for the past like 14 years. They're not going to be a team that's going to allow themselves to coast to like the 9th overall pick. So ideally they'd start one and then start like a really bad backup and just have him kind of like take over the reins. But they're going to start both. And I think they'll win enough games where they won't really be in that quarterback like space for the draft. But we'll see what that looks like come April. And then, Nu, you wanted to talk about the Rams rookie wide receiver. Take it away.
Yeah, so have they done it again? The LA Rams, Jordan Whittington, 6th round receiver, much like Puka Nacua, much like Cooper Kupp, who was 4th round pick, I'm going to say. Anyway, later on pick. Might have been a 5th, but anyway, I think both of them are day 3 picks. And he had 12 receptions this preseason. I must admit, I didn't really know who he was before this preseason game. And since looking back on it, I look back at some of his time at Texas. And the one thing that should be quite worrying for NFC West fans is he looks exactly the same as Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. He has the same body, the same build, the same abilities. He's tough, he gets open, and he has strong hands. And those are 3 things that Sean McVay clearly values in a receiver above everything else. So and in this preseason game, he had 12 receptions for not that many yards. But like you saw for Cooper Kupp when he almost had that 2,000-yard receivers season, they feed their receivers that get open. It's much more about high volume rather than depth of target. And Jordan Whittington fits that mold perfectly. So also he's a bit of a fantasy sleeper. If you're in the late rounds of the fantasy games, I'd keep an eye out for him as well. But that's more just sort of a one to watch, really.
That's a good take.
It's more of a one to watch, really, because we don't know too much about him, really. And I haven't watched that much of his film. But I really do think that he could have a role in this new Rams offense.
Yeah, so I mean, I've not watched Jordan Whittington either in the preseason or in the pre-draft process, but it was interesting because obviously I watched quite a lot of Texas tape because I watched AD Mitchell and because I watched Xavier Worthy, and also now that because we've both watched Quinn Ewers. The hair that pokes out the back of his helmet, he's got quite long hair. When I saw him in a clip on social media, I was like, hang on, is that the same bloke that I saw a couple of times on film at Texas? And, lo and behold, it is. And I think knew that with with the Rams, with Sean McVay being their head coach, I think Sean McVay is one of the most underrated head coaches in the league at the moment. Yeah, he had a few blips along the road a few years ago, and then really showed out last year when the Rams, in a lot of ways, were meant to be closer to the first overall pick than they were the playoffs, and they were 1 point away from winning a playoff game. They were a really good team last year, the Rams, and I put a lot of that at the feet of Sean McVay. I think Matthew Stafford is a really good quarterback. Obviously, he's not quite what he once was. He's been put through the ringer. His body's been put through the ringer. But I think the offensive system that they run in LA with Matthew Stafford, with Sean McVay, with Puka Nacua, with Cooper Kupp is one that will really benefit this young rookie. And obviously, there's quite a lot of mouths to feed now in that offense if now that we've got Cooper Kupp back and Puka Nacua, and they love the running game as well down there in LA. So, he might not have quite the record-breaking rookie season or, the breaking the reception NFL record. But I think you're right. I think it's a really good shout for me to highlight him as a player who might surprise a few people and might be a bit of a sleeper in fantasy.
Yeah, completely. I completely agree. And I think he gets open, strong hands, good after the catch. There's really quite a lot to like about Whittington. And it makes you think, how do these receivers slip to the 6th round all the time? And I think that's hopefully what we're going to try to sort out on draft in a couple months' time. A sneak preview for
draft on draft. Draft on draft. Get that too. We'll talk more about draft on draft closer to the draft. But then, I also wanted to talk about one more rookie quarterback in Jayden Daniels. Now, we spoke about him last week for his week 1 preseason outing when he had that amazing deep ball throw. He also ran in a touchdown. He had a very good week 1 preseason. And he had a nice stat line in week 2 of the preseason. He went 10 for 12 for 78 yards. Obviously, a limited outing, but he has been named QB1 of that team. So that's understandable that they're keeping him kind of rested and not subjecting him to injury. But I also said in that episode last week on week 1 that, we've seen his nice deep ball, we've seen his legs, but have we seen those other parts of his game which concern me, like his inability to avoid big hits? And that really came out in this game. He had a zone read. I don't know really what the play was. It was a bit unclear because there was no one to read. Everyone got blocked, but Nabers, but Daniels pulled the ball from the running back, which I don't think he was meant to do. Obviously, I don't know. I'm not in the room, but that's just my kind of educated guess. He pulled the ball and then dove for a single yard and got smacked by one of the Dolphins defenders. He took a really big hit. From the all-22 angle, you can see his helmet kind of whip back, and that was for the sake of 1-2 yards. That kind of hit, completely unnecessary. And then he had another quarterback-designed run, might have been another read, I'm not sure, where he ran towards the sideline, picked up the first down, and got tackled. And it showed Dan Quinn on the sideline shouting at Jayden Daniels to get down. He picked up the first. I would say most quarterbacks in the league, definitely the quarterbacks that are comparable to Jayden Daniels, like Lamar Jackson or even Patrick Mahomes in many respects, would either get out of play, step out of bounds from the sideline, which is where the design run is going to for that exact reason, or slide. This is the preseason. He picked up the first down. He didn't take a big hit here. I'm not trying to dramatize it, but just his lack of willingness to just slide and get down and kind of live to play another play is beyond me. And you could tell that it really fired up Dan Quinn as well, because that's their quarterback. They drafted him with the 2nd overall pick. If he goes down this season injured because he takes a silly hit, their season's over. So for me, I think my fears about Jayden Daniels is still very real, and they've still yet to be properly answered, because if you said it yourself in the previous episode, New, your best ability is availability. And if Jayden Daniels takes a big hit and those hits start to rack up and he starts to pick up a few injuries, he's not going to be available to play.
Well, and also, Dom, what's Jayden Daniels' weight? He's 195. He weighed in at the draft. He's a slim guy. And when you look at someone who had a similar running style to him in terms of Anthony Richardson, who was 50 pounds heavier, only played 4 games last year. Sliding and getting out of bounds is the most important thing as a quarterback. There's actually 2 yards are not worth a season-ending injury, and he really needs to understand that, because all it takes is 1 or 2 bad hits and your career's over in the NFL. So he needs to get down quickly.
So I've just been informed by Paddy in my ear that Jayden Daniels is 210, which is about 95 kilograms. But I don't know if I buy that. I think that was that classic combine chug a kilogram of water, well, more than a kilogram of water. Chug as much water as you possibly can before you get on those scales. Because even if he is that way, right? Like he's like 6'4", I think. Like he's a tall guy. Like he's built pretty skinny. And I think your comparison, new to Anthony Richardson, is a really good one because it shows you that really like injuries are less about your kind of physique and more about the plays that you subject yourself to. Like, you rightly pointed out that Anthony Richardson is a lot heavier. That didn't really help him. Like, if you're smacking your head off the turf and unfortunately getting concussions or getting people rolled up on you, then there's nothing much you can do about that. Your weight's not really going to help you. Obviously, your weight will help you in those kind of everyday hits and getting, clocked here and there if you're going for a designed cutback run or a sack. Like, that's kind of where your weight will help you. But with Jayden Daniels, like, even if he was Anthony Richardson's weight, I would still be concerned about his play style because it is one which does subject him to really unnecessary hits, and that is how you get injured. And man, a rookie quarterback getting injured, I mean, we've seen it unfortunately with JJ McCarthy already. That is, not a good situation to be in, especially one that you've drafted second overall, as I said.
Yeah, no, Dom, I completely agree. It's also a coach killer. If you draft a quarterback with the second overall pick and he doesn't play, your job really is on the line. And I like Dan Quinn. I think he'll do a good job over there in Washington. But I do not. He needs to learn how to slide, big time.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Jayden Daniels needs to protect himself better if he wants to have an actual career in the NFL and not be that fish from SpongeBob who's got like all of his limbs in a cast. Like, that's the only way he's going to be able to do that, really.
Okay, and Dom, there's also one more thing we wanted to talk about today, which was Gardner Minshew being named a starter for the Las Vegas Raiders. Dom, what are your thoughts on this decision?
Oh man, I think I think Gardner Minshew being named the starting quarterback for the Raiders is probably the right decision. But oh my god, that is so depressing. Like the quarterback battle between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. Oh my god, I couldn't bear that as a fan. Like, we all know what Gardner Minshew is. He is a physically pretty limited quarterback who can operate in offense pretty well. Like he did it with the Colts last year. Like he's kind of that guy that you want if both of your starting quarterback or like your first or second string quarterback go down injured. Like he had been great for the Giants at some point last season. He is not someone that you want as a starting quarterback. And the Raiders have that same mentality, I think, now under their head coach,
Antonio Pierce,
thank you. Under their head coach, Antonio Pierce, that the Steelers have, which is like, we are always going to be competitive. We're always going to play to win. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to criticize that coaching style, but I'm just trying to work out where the quarterback answer for the Raiders is coming from, because I don't think they're going to be a bad team this year. I think Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew will win you enough games to not be competitive, but definitely not be bad. And that's kind of that grey area that is the worst for NFL teams, that nether realm between being actually competitive and being actually bad, because that just kind of allows the cycle of kind of average quarterbacks to continue. And I do think that Aiden O'Connell is at least a bit more exciting than Gardner Minshew. I think it's probably a bit more reliability with Gardner Minshew with his experience, but I think Aiden O'Connell at least is young and might become a little bit better. I think Minshew now is at his ceiling. Like, he's never going to play better than when he played in Jacksonville. We know that now. We've seen him play since that point. We can't exactly say the same about Aiden O'Connell, but oh my god, that quarterback battle between those two quarterbacks, man. Raiders fans have been going through it, let me tell you that.
Well, Dom, you sound like a bit of a Gardner Minshew hater. I know what Gardner Minshew would say to you, Dom.
What?
So, Vincent Van Gogh only had one ear, and they said he wasn't good enough. What did he say to them?
I can't
hear you.
Is that actually his quote?
No, I just saw it in TikTok. He's a bull. But what I think is a real kick in the teeth for Raiders fans is, also take this with a pinch of salt, because this type of reporting always comes up around the time when there's a bit of a mid-off between two quarterbacks. But apparently the Raiders almost had a deal in place to move up to take CJ Stroud in the draft in 2022. But apparently Josh McDaniels vetoed the move completely. So take that with a pinch of salt. And I don't think Raiders need any more excuse to hate Josh McDaniels than they already do. But if that's one of those things that's really rubbing salt into the wounds. Just no chance of getting better or getting worse. Just sort of just existing for a season, which you could argue is worse than being bad, but you never know.
And that's a bit annoying with the Raiders, is in a lot of ways they're actually a really good team. Like, the defense last year, for the first time in literally their entire history, was actually good. And obviously they got Max Crosby. They made a massive signing of that defensive tackle from the Dolphins. What's his name again, New?
Who? Oh, Christian Wilkins.
The Dolphins guy who they took. Christian
Wilkins.
Wilkins. They've also got Christian Wilkins. Thanks, Paddy, for checking that for me. And that defense is going to be good, I think. And the offense, putting quarterback aside, I really liked what I saw from that offense with regards to Brock Bowers, because in my pre-draft process, I said that Bowers isn't really a traditional tight end. Like, you cannot expect him to be Rob Gronkowski and like block a defensive lineman long enough, or kind of like dig out a really big linebacker. He's more of like an offensive Swiss Army knife, like he was at Georgia. Like, he was put at quarterback, running back, he was lined up in line, out wide in the slot. And I was really pleased to see that Bowers in that first preseason game was also lined up similarly. Like, he was a fullback at one point. He was lined up as a traditional tight end attached to the offensive line. He was lined up out wide in the slot. He was in motion a lot. So I really liked how they've used Bowers, because I love seeing teams play to the players' strengths of who they draft. And obviously they've got Devontae Adams, who is still one of the best wide receivers in the league. Is he as elite as he once was? No, I don't think so. I think people like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown are kind of all probably a bit better than him now. But oh my God, like, do not sleep on him at your peril. So there's and they obviously got they obviously drafted that center as well in the second round of the NFL draft. So and they've got like Colton Miller, the offensive lineman. So they've got some really good talent on that team. It's really just the quarterback that's holding them back, which is a bit frustrating, because in many ways that's the hardest position to fix, because you need to have a high draft pick or you need to get really, really lucky. And that's the thing, is that I think Aiden O'Connell could let you be lucky. I don't think Gardner Minshew would, but I do think he'll give them a certain level of competitiveness, which perhaps Aiden O'Connell wouldn't give.
I also do really like Antonio Pierce as a head coach. And I know, Dom, me and you are more stats guys than football guys, I think it's fair to say. But Antonio
football's
Pierce
played, not on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Antonio Pierce is one of those football guys, that plays with toughness, plays with energy, makes them run laps, very old school. But I do believe in a sort of he does adapt it to the modern game rather than just being stuck in his ways. And I really do like the mentality they played with towards the end of last season. You could really see that grit, that determination in their plays, which resulted to them beating the Chargers by, 45 points? They absolutely, what was it? What was the score towards the end of the season?
Yeah, but also like the Chargers weren't very good. But yeah, it was a great win. Like, and then they started smoking cigars in the locker room and yada yada yada. Like, I think Antonio Pierce is that classic like culture bringer head coach, kind of leader of men, a bit like the Lions head coach Dan Campbell. Not Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell. I've been so bad with names.
What's happened with your coach names? Yeah.
I don't know, man. They've all left my head. I was going to say Dan Orlovsky, but he's not. He's also not a coach. Dan Campbell. But yeah, so Antonio Pierce is that kind of leader of men, culture bringer, kind of football guy, type head coach. And I think those are few and far between in the modern game for a reason, because I think you kind of want to have an elite offense, or you really want to have like a top defensive coach. But nevertheless, the Raiders needed that culture change after Josh McDaniels nearly burned that whole franchise to the ground. So I'm not complaining about Antonio Pierce. And the Raiders did really well, like surpass expectations last year. I think they could definitely surpass them again this year. So it's just a question of how good their quarterback play will be.
I completely agree, Dom.
And then finally, before we wrap this episode up, I do just want to say that I went to Taylor Swift concert yesterday with my girlfriend Natasha. Shout out Natasha. Shout out Tishy. And actually, I got this like little friendship bracelet thing. It's got the Chiefs, because I was a big Swiftie. Says Chiefs. You got to make like friendship bracelets. Apparently, this was new to me. And let me tell you this one thing. Okay, get these Swifties at an away day. Oh my God, they didn't sit down for like 3.5 hours, and they didn't stop singing for like 3.5 hours. Like those fans are ultras. Like if they were into a team, then your support would be unrivaled. I'm not going to lie. Like I've been to a lot of NFL games. I've been to a lot of Premier League football games. Like those fans, Taylor Swift fans, blow everyone out of the water. Unfortunately,
them marching outside of Wembley. And like the comments being like, "Your bird's a Taylor Swift ultra," is it's got me laughing all week long. It's so funny.
So that wraps up our preseason week 2 roundup. If you have enjoyed the episode and got this far, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can't be on Apple Podcasts because I uploaded there. So if you're on Spotify, then follow us on Spotify. Don't forget to follow our social medias as well. Our Sportsmanlike Conduct on Instagram and on TikTok. So go and give us a follow over there. Until the next time then, New, I've been Dom Corbs. You've been Nick Corbs. We've been on Sportsmanlike Conduct. We'll see you in the next episode.